Between dishes and douches, a woman is always busy.
I remember, I think I heard my first dirty joke come out of your mouth. I thought to myself,
Do
oh
you
my
remember
God.
the joke?
Yeah, I do. You still tell it.
What's the dirty
You
joke
did-
she always tells about
The whale, the flubber of the. Come on, help me out here.
I'm trying to think.
Of the blowhole.
Or diaphoresis of the blowhole?
Thank
Yeah, that's the one.
you. There it is.
Tell that, Jim. She said that's what.
Tell it to
Yeah,
If they'd ask for a sickness and I didn't know it, I'd say she had diaphoresis of the blowhole.
Her attitude seems to be, I've made it this far, there's nothing you can do to me, I can say whatever I want to say.
Michael said to the boys, "Don't tell them any dirty stories." But it reminded me of, she was only a horseman's daughter, but all the horsemen knew her.
Grandma isn't, held back by that any longer, and she just lets them have it right between the eyes, tell them what she thinks, and to heck with them if they don't like it. What are they going to do to her? She's 100.
We were in a restaurant just a couple weeks ago, and Grandma ordered some kind of a meat dish, and you didn't really care for it, so you didn't eat very much of it. So when the waiter came back to the table and said, would you like a box to take this home? She looked at the waiter and said, well, if it wasn't good now, it's not going to be good at home.
I should have said that today too.
Yeah, she doesn't hold back anything, Grandma. She'll tell everyone just how it is. I only know that the first thing when I told you I was getting married to Rob, do you remember what you asked me?
No.
You wanted to know how good he was. That was the first thing you asked me.
You're kidding.
No,
Good in what way?
every way. What do you think? You told me I should always keep credit cards in my own name, and then you wanted to know how good he was. I said, did you want all the details?
No, it must have worked.
Remember the first day at the table?
That's what they want to hear. No, I don't.
First day at the table, I was sitting down the end, you were
didn't
sitting
drink.
across from me, and you looked at Marlene, and the first thing out of your mouth. So, did you stup them yet?
I
Did I
told him
say-
that story, see?
Oh, you told the story already?
That's what
Did
you
I-
asked me.
Did I
Did-
say it
I-
that kind
yes,
of
that
You
was
said,
the
did you
word
stup
you
them yet? That's what you
I
said to
don't
her.
believe I talk like that.
That was my introduction to you.
Do you understand what he said? I don't believe that I even said that.
Oh, I guarantee you said that. You remember what we had for Rosh Hashanah dinner?
See how dirty I was?
You remember what we had for Rosh Hashanah dinner? Did you tell this one yet, Marlene?
No.
That's Rose's family.
Put a ham on the table next to the brisket
Really?
for Rosh Hashanah.
Did you see what I committed a sin? Because the Jewish people aren't supposed to eat pork. See the big sin I committed?
You said you like a nice piece of ham with your dinner, so.
Of course.
Do you know you're Jewish?
Sometimes.
I think what's clearest in my mind is my mother's funeral. It was during the horse and buggy stages, horse and carriages. It was a large funeral. She died during there was a diphtheria epidemic. I had a nice childhood while she was alive, I know that. After that, it was hard. I suffered mentally because, you miss your mother. But I had good neighbors, and they taught me how to cook, make certain things, and I turned out to be a pretty good cook because of that. My father remarried a couple of months after my mother died. I didn't like that. I wasn't happy. When I was 16, I left his house, went to live with my grandmother. I had a good home with her for about 8 years. The man I married, I met when I was 13. He was 15. Sam, from London, his parents moved to Iowa. And Sam had an aunt and uncle that lived in Iowa. But before they went to Iowa, they had a store, a candy and grocery store in Minnesota, where I lived, and I was a customer at that store of Sam's relatives. And one summer, they sent Sam from Iowa to Minnesota to visit his relatives. I met him in the grocery store, and in those days, for 1 penny, you could buy an ice cream cone. And Sam waited on me, and he put ice cream in the bottom of the cone and filled it to the top for 1 penny. He was from Iowa, so our relationship was mostly through the mail. At 18, he proposed and said we could get married, but instead of getting married, there was a boom going on in Florida, and my husband and a lot of boyfriends drove in a car from Iowa to Florida, and I didn't see Sam for 5 years. He found another girl down there, but he didn't marry her. They were engaged for quite a while. There were several boys that proposed and wanted me, but I wasn't ready at that time, and I didn't care for them. And the minute he heard that I was coming here, he wrote me a letter. He said that he too was thinking of California, and where will I stay when I get here. So when I answered him, I gave him my aunt's address. The reason I came to California is that not only my grandmother took sick, the store I worked for was going out of it. It was losing its lease. And rather than look for a new job, I thought I would do it in California. 2 days before I arrived, he was already waiting at the doorstep for me. The wedding ring? Yes, I remember. I think it was $5. But when I became engaged, my husband had the diamond in Iowa, and he sent for it. He was engaged to a girl for a couple of years, another girl in Florida, but he never married her. And she sent the ring back. So when he proposed, he had the ring in his pocket. We decided we were going to run off and get married. We didn't want a wedding, but my aunt that I lived with, my Aunt Bert, she said, I always give a New Year's party, and the party costs me. She says, let's make it the wedding. And I was married in the color of orchid. The dress was orchid with yellow roses. And my aunt, she did not contact a photographer, so there were no wedding pictures taken, of all things. And maybe that's why I was so self-conscious with pictures after that. We made one trip back to Iowa. I never met his parents until I made the trip back. And then when I decided I was pregnant with my first child, I told Sam I wanted to come back to California and make that my home. Jimmy was born in '31, Stanley was born in '33. I knew I was having a baby, but I didn't expect an incubator child. He weighed 4 pounds and some odd ounces. He was in the incubator 1 month, so we moved out of the apartment, which didn't have a bedroom. It was just one of those single apartments, and I had time to move into a 3-room bedroom apartment. By the time I brought him home, I bought a laundry basket, was his first bed. By the time he was 9 months old, he was so normal and had gained all the weight he should. And I thought he was nice looking.
When I was sick as a little kid and had asthma, my mother used to have to take me, as she said earlier, on the streetcar to go to the Children's Hospital. And they would put you in a dark, closed little room, and you'd have to wait for the doctor. She'd sit there and play games with me and entertain me. And for some reason, those things stick in your mind. They're simple, dumb little things, but they're experiences that the child has with his parent on a one-on-one basis that stay with you.
I never owed a doctor. If I'd owe a doctor, I always said to Jimmy, I made a little bar mitzvah, which is when he became 13. I told him, I just paid you off. You're clear. and you just grew up to be a good boy.
Thank you.
Very good, and I'm very lucky. Jimmy was 9 years old. We bought this. This was the new track being built. It was the last house in the track that he got. Sam had $1.50 in his pocket, and he gave that to the salesman. I think I have a receipt in the house. In those days, you could pennies counted. $1.50. The man took it, and that's how we bought this house. At the age of 40, by the time Jimmy was I think he was in high school at the time, or almost in high school. And I decided my 2 boys could take care of themselves if I went to work. So I started looking for empty stores, thinking that for a while Sam was getting a Christmas bonus, and I saved up a couple $1,000, and I knew that would have to go towards some kind of business. And I looked around this neighborhood, and I found a little card shop up the street on Victory, and we went to see the landlady who owned it. It didn't take us long to open up because Sam knew where to buy the fixtures and clothing. I think we were open within a week or 2. It was called Tenner's Dress Shop.
She knew everybody, and everybody came to say hi to her. Even if they weren't coming in to buy clothes, they would come in just because Rose and Sam were kind of the centerpiece, and they wanted to interact with them.
You have your ups and downs. You had good years and bad years, but it was one of the first cut-rate sample dress shops that opened up at that time. You are what you make of it yourself, I think. Can't sit back and wait. There's very few husband and wives that last that long, being together day in and day out. He was my chauffeur and my best friend. I never drove a car. I had a fear. And if I had a doctor appointment, he was willing to lock the store, lock the doors, he took me to the beauty shop every week. We had breakfast together in a restaurant, and then he'd pick me up after I was through with my hair. He was very kind about that. We had several nice cruises. I went to New York with him on a buying trip, which was nice. I've been to New Orleans, and been to Florida twice. Been around a little bit. He was nice looking. He started to lose his hair, though, when my first child was born. And all the women used to fuss over him up at the store, but he never flirted and never showed me that he, cared for her. In fact, on his dying day, he said he had never touched another woman. We were married 47 years when he passed on. It was true love, if that's what you want to know. The real kind. Now, all you hear about today is divorce and divorce. When I got married, I knew it was forever. It would have been if Sam had taken better care of himself. He had prostate surgery before we left, and he took some radiation treatments, which didn't agree with him, but he was pretty brave and everything. He was born in London, incidentally, and he was 2 years old when his mother brought him to America. So he said one of his trips, he wanted to see London, wanted to see his birthplace. We went to Israel first, 1 week in Jerusalem, 1 week in Tel Aviv, 1 week in London. When we came back from London, he had to see the doctor, and the doctor told him that one of the tests showed that his prostate was cancerous, and that's why he suggested the radiation. So when Sam went to the Wailing Wall in Israel, he was crying, and when he came to see me, he told me that what he had and what he expected. He wanted me well taken care of, and I told him not to worry about that. And, that I've always managed. No, he didn't do much talking. Then when he went into a coma, he never opened his eyes after that. That's it. The doctor said it's time to pull the plug. He was 72. He was 25 when we were married. If the couples today were as much in love as we were, it would be a wonderful world. He did make a statement that I would remarry if anything happened to him. He said, "Oh, you're going to get married right away." I said, "Never." He said, "You'll see." I think that worried him. But I only had that one. He was the only one that I would consider. I never dreamed I could live without him, but you do. He was my back scratcher. I had a lady friend who lost her husband 9 months after mine, and we chummed together for 20 years. She drove a car. So we went to the club quite often, and we went to a lot of parties and affairs. Whenever we had any family affairs, I was always invited to her side, and she was invited to my affairs, you know. The main part was that she'd pick me up around noon or before noon, and then we would have family talks and little intimate talks. I don't know what kind of friendship it was honest. Yeah, she had cancer, but she never used that word. The last time I visited, she was sleeping, and I brought a little cake over there and left it with the lady, and the next thing I knew is they called me that night that she was gone.
I want to mention before they finish talking about me too, that going to lunch with you and Gert when Gert was still alive,
Yes.
and sometimes she was feeling so bad she couldn't eat, she'd sip tea, or you maybe didn't feel well, and you'd still get up and get dressed and go out, and
Oh,
you'd always say, "What's the alternative?"
Every day for 20 years.
So it was a great inspiration to me to get up and get dressed and get moving and do something every single day, because what's the alternative?
I know. Well, it's at least 50 years of poker. I'm sure it was before I was 50. But in the beginning, when we first moved in this house, I don't know how I met them, but I had a nice group of girls, and we used to play cards at home. I never knew anything about the casinos until Sam took me. I remember the nights that I used to go with him to the casino and have to sit and wait. And one night on the way home, I think I was angry because it was late, and he said, "You've got to learn how to play so that the waiting was terrible." And he taught me. When I started out, my knees were shaking and my hands, and you're a nervous wreck in the beginning. Very nervous until you learn, Playing wasn't the main thing in my life, although some people think it was. Because after that, I stopped cooking and entertaining. I took sick, it's going on a year ago. I came down with pneumonia and I was in the hospital.
doing fine. I passed that. But when I came home, everything started to get blurry. For a minute I thought, well, I'll have a cataract operation and I'll be all right. And the cataract doctor said, no, that wouldn't help me, that I had this macular degeneration, which comes with age. Something wears out and they can't fix it. And that's what happened to me.
She was treated like royalty at these clubs. You know, I would walk her in and everybody knew her and was so happy to see her, and oh, Mrs. T, how are you? And let me get you a table, and can we get you a cup of coffee? And you know, the waiters and the maitre d's and the hostesses all, you know, just were fawning over her because everybody there loved her, all the players, and she was just a fixture at these places. And she just got the best treatment because everybody loved her.
Do you remember the time you staked me down there?
No, I don't.
You staked me for $20 and lasted 5 minutes. The people scared the hell out of me and I left.
Oh, was that what it was? I thought you were.
You know, I've known you for 26 years and you staked me once.
You could say that different too. I was almost an everyday player.
Oh.
You know, I didn't have certain times. Whenever my lady friend could drive me, I would try to be ready. But it was nice while it lasted.
All right, anything else?
There's a lot more.
You're kidding. You are kidding.
Are you done? You're tired?
No, I'm not tired, but how much more is there?
Oh no, for today it won't be much longer, but it will come back tomorrow.
Well, what is tomorrow going to be?
Just more talking.
More questions?
More talking, yes.
Really? For heaven's sake.
The overriding theme is food. There was always massive amounts of cooking and food going on. Grandma would, you know, one of the classics is she'd walk up to me, and with a tray of lasagna that could, you know, feed a Panzer division, and she'd say, "Oh, I made this for you." You know, it wasn't I made this for the family, or I made this for dinner, or I made this for the 20 people here. It's I made this for you, as if there was a real expectation me personally, would eat that entire, you know, 4 foot by 4 foot tray of lasagna.
We used to joke that we could invite 30 extra people and we'd still have leftovers. She cooked for an army, and it was just, there were 4 of us in my family, and we'd come over for our Shabbos dinner on Friday night, and she would make not one, not probably 3 main courses. You'd have chicken,
She always a kid.
and you'd have a roast, and you'd have, I don't know what else you'd make, but always 3 main courses, minimum 3 main
I was
courses.
always afraid that so-and-so wouldn't like, one person wouldn't like chicken and one wouldn't like.
You shouldn't defend anyone, right?
So I made everything that they liked.
Well, there is love. L-O-V-E, and that counts, I think. Better than all that food you talk about. Couldn't love any harder than I do. But I must have been a good wife and a good mother, because I have 2 sons, and they don't come any better. I don't know how many women can boast of children being in their 70s, 72 and 74 right now. When I entered 60, I was scared to death. My husband took me out to dinner, and I was sad. I thought 60 was so old at that time. Otherwise, I never thought of age, or never went in for cosmetic surgery or anything like that. God was good. He wrinkled my arms, but not my face too much. They tell I'm the only 100-year-old lady that still has manicures and pedicures. Can't help it.
I took her to the doctor one time, not too long ago, for a checkup or something like that. And we were talking to the doctor, and that doctor asked her about well, what does your other doctor think about this situation, you know? And she looked at me and goes, oh, he died, you know? And that happened about, that conversation included about 4 doctors. And, you know, she's just outlived so many people.
When people say amazing or it's frightening, then it starts to scare me. It's just frightening, you know, that you just say to yourself, how much longer, and you just worry about that, I guess, now. I don't like to think about that. I've survived a heart attack and I've survived pneumonia. So I guess God is good, if you can say that. And He is. Been good to me. I've been very lucky.
Grandma has been, and is, you know, the central spine of this family. I mean, and not just because of longevity. She's the one that keeps everybody together. She's the center of the universe. Everybody kind of gravitates around her.
Everybody knows you.
Popular, huh?
That's right. And Grandma Rose to everybody.
I
10 years of
remember when
memory.
you were born, I went to the hospital and I was so happy when they told me she had a girl. And I said, no, you're just kidding. You know, I wanted a girl after Kyle was born. And I thought they were just making me feel good. I didn't believe it. When I came to the hospital, she wasn't even washed yet.
You must have come too early.
You said the service was poor up there.
Well, she was a little early, remember?
She had you between her legs, and all I saw was a bloody baby.
Special.
Those are the memories you like to hear about, huh?
I'm proud that I was able to have children of my own, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Many of my friends didn't accomplish that. Who do I love? Who do I love? Me. You? You're such a good girl.
To have her in our lives for this long, in this capacity, is just a blessing that is irreplaceable.
Do you want me to get up?
Oh, no.
You're the star here, Rose.
Oh, sure.
You always have been.
Yeah, sure. I don't want to be the stars.
That's the way it ends.